The Danish Deception Part 2. Okay, so he sent me this message saying, you should come to Ibiza this weekend. I'm going with a bunch of friends. And he's like, I'll send you the flight. Everything will be paid for. And I thought about it for a second because, come on, who wouldn't want to go to Ibiza? And then I thought a couple of reasons why I didn't want to go was mainly because I just bought a Chanel bag. So I was like, I want to work and make more money. And also I felt like this is the type of guy that things come easy for him. And this is not something that's going to be easy for you to obtain. And I didn't want our first weekend to be like just partying together with all of his friends. Like that's not what I wanted. So I ended up telling him no, but I just ended up saying that I needed to work. And I thought he was never going to talk to me again. But somehow this like lit a fire under him and he became even more persistent and he started pursuing me even more. And he was sending me messages like, when are you going to come visit me in Copenhagen? Or I would love to come to Dallas to come see you. And I was just like, who is this man and what's happening? Still not really taking him serious. And then maybe like a couple weeks later, he sends me another message. And at this point, we're still talking pretty consistently on Instagram. We still do not have each other's numbers. And he sends me a message. He says, hey, I have a work conference coming up in Monaco and I would love for you to come. And I read that message and I was like near the south of France, like that Monaco? And he was like, yeah, like I can get you your flight and everything will be taken care of. And I was like, okay, well, give me some time to think about it because I didn't want to say yes on the spot, but I was like, okay, this is something I definitely want to consider. So I thought about it for a while. I talked to my friends about it. I talked to my sisters about it. At first I was like, I don't think I'm going to do it. Like, this is crazy. And then over time, I started like talking myself into it. And then one morning I woke up and I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to go to Monaco. So I sent him a message and I said, hey, I've decided I'm going to come to Monaco. And he sends me a message. He said, this is the best day ever. I'm so happy. Send me your passport and everything. I'll book the flight. So I sent him a picture of my passport. And I also was like, oh, and by the way, here's my phone number. He was like, I've been waiting for you to give this to me for now like weeks. And I said, okay, here you go. Thank you for like inviting me on this trip. So I give him my phone number and he sends me a message and he said, it took you long enough. And I said, oh yeah, well, sorry. I'm just a little bit more reserved when it comes to like dating and men. Like, I just like to make sure like I'm a very intentional person. And he was just so respectful to me. I remember when he was booking the flights and everything, he was like, don't worry, like I'll get you your own hotel room. Like he was just being so respectful. And so I remember our very first phone call so perfectly because it came completely out of the blue. It was like on like a Tuesday and I'm sitting at my work desk and he sends me a message. He's like, can I call you? And I was like, oh, he wants to call me. And I'm literally discombobulated, freaking out. Like, what am I going to do when this man actually calls me? But I was like, you need to get together. So he calls me, I answer the phone, and he's actually in a cab to the airport. He's about to go on a work trip. And we were just small talking about our day. And I felt like those like butterflies that I felt whenever we had been together at dinner in Croatia. And I remember getting off the phone with him and I was just sitting there like cheesing, like, which I don't ever do. And I was just, this guy is special. And he sent me a message and he was like, you are so cute. Like, I love talking to you. And I said, I love talking to you too. And so basically from that moment on, we just started talking on the phone all the time, like for 1 hour, 2 hours a day. We started talking about a lot of things, about a lot of different aspects of our lives. He was telling me that, he was living in Copenhagen. He was living in this condo. Obviously, he knew that I lived in Dallas. And then we started talking about past relationships. And I told him, I was very honest. I said, I actually haven't had like a truly serious relationship before. I have always been a very independent person, but I do want to meet someone. I do want to like get married and have kids, but I don't feel like that pressure to like force it. Like, I have such a great example with my parents and I really want to have like an amazing love in this lifetime. And so I'm going to take my time to find that. And I asked him like, what's your history with your dating? And he was like, yeah, well, I actually was in a relationship with a girl and we were together for about 4 years. And I actually broke up with her about 4 months before I met you. And I said, oh my gosh, like the 4 years is a long time. He said, yeah, like it needed to happen for a while. And really what happened was that she told him that she was ready to have kids and he wasn't ready to have kids. And I guess that forced him to realize that she wasn't the one. And they were living together. So it was like a really hard situation to get out of, but he finally was able to do so. And so I was happy to hear that had been about 4 months since they broke up, because if he had said like they had just broken up, I would have been a little bit more hesitant to pursue things, because I know like you go through a breakup, you need time to heal. But I felt like, okay, 4 months should be enough time. And then we started talking about like our families a little bit too. I told him I'm super close with my family. He said I'm really close with my mom and my little sister. I do have an older sister that I don't talk to. And basically something happened and she was like being like physically abusive, verbally, physically abusive towards his mom. And he decided to cut her out of his life because she's crazy. And I said, listen, I get that. That makes sense. Like, you should not have her in your life. And I think just like over the course of a month, we're talking on the phone for just hours. And I tell people all the time that it felt like we fell in love over the phone, because from the time that I had decided to go to Monaco to the time that I actually left for Monaco, it was a month. And we had this plan that we weren't going to FaceTime at all, because we wanted the next time we saw each other to be in person, which I thought at the time was super romantic. And so, you know, we started talking about like hypotheticals. I remember he told me one day, he said, you know, if we ever end up getting married, you're going to meet the queen. And I remember just like laughing at that comment. And he said, no, I'm being serious. And I said, what do you mean I'll meet the queen? And he said, well, you know, my family has a royal title. And I was like, wait, what? And he sent me this link to this site. It's called the Order of the Elephants. And he said, you can do some research and then we can talk about it. And I said, okay. So I start going through the page that he sent me, and I see someone that had the same last name as him, like some old guy from like the 1700s. And I remember taking a screenshot and I said, is this your great grandpa? And he goes, now you're getting on track. My next question to you is, how's your etiquette? And I was like, I mean, I think it's okay. And so I'm sitting here like, who is this man? He's attractive. He has a great job. He has a royal title. Like, is there anything wrong with him at this point? And I have always believed in the term, it's too good to be true. But I mean, and I was feeling that 100%. Like, I felt like, when's the other shoe gonna drop? But it didn't drop that first month. It was just like, we truly fell in love over the phone. And so we are getting closer and closer to the trip to Monaco, and I start packing, and I feel like that's like when the nerves start hitting me, was when I'm packing, like, oh my goodness, this is actually happening. And I remember my sister was like, you need to put air tags in like all your bags. And I'm like, I don't need to put air tags in anything. Like, I trust this man. Like, I know like it's gonna be okay. Like, every part of me felt like so safe with him already, which was crazy because I hadn't really spent much time with him. Maybe this is trauma from being on The Bachelor, I'm not sure. But I felt very safe with him. And so the day comes where I'm supposed to go on the trip. And so I order my Uber, get to the airport, and I felt like it was kind of like a good sign, because I posted that I was at DFW, and one of my really good girlfriends texted me that lives in a different state. She was like, hey, I'm actually in DFW too. And I was like, oh my gosh. So she comes, meets me at my terminal. She's like, where are you going? I go, I'm actually going to Monaco to meet this guy that I met in Croatia. And she was like, this is insane. And so I just felt like seeing that friend was like a good sign. I don't know why. And I ended up just boarding the flight. I remember boarding that first flight. I had a layover in Madrid, but boarding that first flight, I was sitting there and I was like, this shit is really happening. And all the nerves are just taking over, but I'm like, take a chill pill. It's gonna be okay. You're gonna get there. It's gonna be fine. And at that point, I was like, okay, the worst thing that happens is like, he's a crazy person and I have enough money where I can like just book my own hotel and I'll just have a good time by myself. Like, it'll be fine. So I like had that backup plan. But yeah, I had my layover in Madrid, and then my next flight was to Nice. And so I board my flight to Nice. It was like a really quick flight, and I get to Nice, I land, I get my bags and baggage claim. I sent him a text. I said, I'm here. And I'm rolling both of my bags, about to walk out, freaking out, and let's continue on in part 3.